Well, the St. Louis Blues are in free fall right now, and it shouldn't be long before they're willing to start to sell off some pieces this season before the trade deadline. And it's pretty easy to see players like Justin Faulk and Braden Shen being dealt. But what about players and some bigger names like Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou? Should Doug Armstrong and Alexander Steen move their core players? What could the return be, and would it be worth it to trade some of their current franchise players? We're going to talk about all that and more on this episode of Note News. Well, welcome into another episode of Note News. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast. We put out episodes about twice a week, and we're talking all things Blues. And so far this season, it hasn't been as exciting and as fun as we hoped it would be going into the season. I know a lot of Blues fans are feeling some fatigue around this team, and um, we are no different. But we're gonna continue to come on and talk about the Blues about twice a week. And today we're going to be talking about some trade rumors. There have been a lot of big names out there on the trade market. Some of the movement has started going with some of the bigger trades last week. There was Kiefer Sherwood and Rasmus Anderson were moved, and that sort of opens up some possibilities for a lot of teams around the league, but also the Blues in particular. So if you missed our last episode, definitely go check that one out. We talked about how the Anderson trade impacts the market for Justin Faulk, and could the Blues move him, who to, and what for. So check that one out for sure. That's our last episode. And today we're going to be talking about some of the bigger potential trade chips that the Blues have on their roster right now. Mainly Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou will sort of be the focus, just because those are the players that have been out there in trade buzz and a couple of rumors. So we'll sort of talk about why this would not be why it would or would not be a good idea for the Blues. But before we get to that main segment today, I figured we should talk about the Blues as a whole right now. It's been a little bit since we did a check-in on sort of like where they're at with their on-ice product, and I mean it's a little bit more of the same, Alec. Right? They're 47. They have 47 points. That's second to last in the league. They're 31st in points. They are 31st in points percentage with 452. And they are on a 4-game losing streak after their shootout loss to the Kings last night. Sort of where are you at with this team right now, and what are your thoughts on some of the recent results and recent performances? I mean, you've had games like the Oilers game where they got stomped 5-0. You had a closer game against Dallas, a closer game last night against the Kings. What are your thoughts on the team's recent play and recent results?
Yeah, I mean, it's been frustrating as the rest of the year has been and seems to be that it will go. And it's been more of the same, really. I think the exasperation has mostly left my voice, just because there's I've already given everything that I could have given. Um, at this point, it's just sort of the status quo.
Alec, you sound
So
so
I've
defeated.
I'm kind of like reaching a stage of acceptance with it, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
um, I don't know.
yeah.
I understand what it is. I'm getting ready to watch when I turn on the game.
How far are we fallen? How far are we fallen?
I there are those years in sports where
Yeah,
you just
it's true.
know that it's not going to get better. That the cosmic scales have to be balanced at some points, and this is one of those years. The for all our St. Louis sports fans, the Cardinals had a similar thing in 2023, where
Oh,
just you knew it wasn't gonna, and it was gonna continue to get worse, and it continued to get worse up until the last day of the season.
yeah,
So I don't know. I'm kind
yeah.
of approaching like the kind of dumb sports fan side of things, of like arguably superstition. So I mean, I guess that tells you where I'm at, but I don't know.
It's
I
yeah, it's hard to be anywhere else right now, honestly. Like with the results and like just the way they look in general. Like, yeah, I mean, I think that's understandable. Um, we've talked in recent episodes and recent weeks about okay, if they have to lose, what is the way in which they like should lose, right? And I think I saw Sam on Twitter say like this has to be the most ethical tank ever. It's like it's clear that they are not trying to lose, um, they're not, at least not yet, and it's like they are really giving an effort, which I can respect. And like I think the main thing for me, if we were to say like what's the best way for them to lose if the season's kind of lost, like what's the best way for them to go about the rest of their season. We've talked about sort of seeing what you have in some of the younger players, and they have done that to a certain extent with calling up Dalibor Dvorsky a while ago, calling up Otto Stenberg about a month and a half ish ago, and the two of them I think have been some bright spots and some more of the providers of hope around the team at the NHL level right now. I mean, Devo was quiet for a little while, but he has 2 games with a goal back to back against the Kings last night. I mean, that was a beauty that he scored. And then against Dallas the night before, he scored that power play goal. But just seeing like on the stat sheet, or seeing the notification pop up, or the you know the graphic on the screen as you're watching the game, goal by Dalibor Dvorsky, assisted by Otto Stenberg. I mean, that's exciting to see. It's exciting to see that chemistry start to develop. And if you watch that play, like, oh my goodness, was that an exciting play and a great play by both of them start to finish. Devo breaks up the pass in the defensive zone, uh, gets up ice. Otto Stenberg has the pass through the legs of the defending skater, and Devo with like 3 guys on him in the offensive zone, but between the dots, just sort of like fakes like he's going to deke, and I think the goalie wasn't really quite sure. Darcy Kemper wasn't quite sure what he was going to do, and he just puts it over his shoulder. I mean, it was a great finish. So thoughts on them? I mean, just like thoughts on the performance of the young guys in particular, despite team wide results not being ideal.
Yeah, that's always what you look for is continued growth, and especially in the younger players, that's where you want to see the most growth, because they have the highest way to climb. But excuse me, they also have probably the best means to do so, just with their youth and athleticism. Um, and so I think that you can't say enough about the performance of the young players, how crucial they are to the future of this organization. That watching moments like this, when the season is seemingly lost, and the team on the whole isn't where you want to be, to still be able to make a positive out of that situation and grow it into something is always what you're looking for. And I think Dvorsky's done a pretty good job of that. I don't think he's done an exceptional job of it, but I think he's done a pretty good job, um, of showing that he's still worth investing in, and showing that with time he could be a really special hockey player, because he definitely is still showing that there is room to grow. But overall, I think their performance has been a massive bright spot in the organization on the year, and especially even a guy like Otto Stenberg, who I feel like really came to me out of like, I mean, not out of nowhere, as in I'd never heard the name, but I never thought Otto Stenberg could be uh, as productive as this. So to
Yeah.
me, it's they're they're both kind of either meeting or exceeding their expectations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is just their first taste of the league for sure, but um, they don't look like totally out of their depth. I think it would be a different situation and might require some like reevaluation of their development if they looked totally lost out there, which they don't. So I mean, I think that's a positive takeaway for me. It shows that you could probably play a full season with each of them as soon as next year, and that could be a good call. Like when Devo was called up for that cup of coffee last year, it was pretty clear like this is probably he's probably not ready to you know hang around the NHL for the rest of the season and like start off unless he has a great training camp. But I think as he has sort of worked into those minutes this go round, he looks a lot more comfortable. And I think the work he put in after that cup of coffee, I think it's showing. I think that's coming across on the ice back at the NHL level. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Why don't we go ahead and talk about the get on to our main segment today, which is big trade potential, big trade pieces that the Blues have in their two stars, their two like inarguable core pieces. If we were to sort of list, the core pieces for the Blues, at least like if we did this last year, they would be at the top of the list. It's Robert Thomas and it's Jordan Kyrou, two players who have been on a lot of trade boards lately, and it's kind of a situation where I think we should make this clear for any Blues fans who maybe don't know. Um, I don't think this is a situation where Doug Armstrong and the Blues are sort of broadcasting to the league and letting it be known that they are trying to trade these two players. I don't think that's the situation they're in. I think what is happening is, they are saying no one is really like most players are not untouchable. Maybe there's like a few that are, but like they're sort of open for business in the sense that we will listen to offers on pretty much anyone, and we're not going to like we're not desperate to move players like Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, and that's not going to lead us to um, you know get snubbed in the return for those players. Like it's probably going to take a pretty hefty package to get them. But I think they are listening, and I personally think that's probably a good approach to take. I mean, what are your thoughts on we are listening on everyone? Do you think they should be a little more aggressive, or do you think this is maybe the right call?
No, if anything, I think that they should really sit back and wait. I think the market can kind of fall in a really nice spot to kind of fall into their laps if they play their cards right. And the deadline or the demand for players like Robert Thomas caliber is only going to go up as the deadline approaches. As teams get more desperate, as losing the chance to acquire a player of that talent, and the yeah, the I think the interest and the price is only going to raise the longer you wait. So I think being really patient is actually a very prudent strategy for the Blues to follow. They could make the deal right now and probably get a pretty good return, but a GM is gonna, like I said, get more desperate as time passes and as other teams could swoop in and make the move. So I think the strategy is sound, and I would offer the same counsel.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think as many teams as there are, especially in the East, that are in it. I think allowing the market to sort of come to you and some of that desperation to drive buyers to you rather than driving you to seek out those buyers. I think is probably the right approach to take, especially when you have teams like the Buffalo Sabres and Detroit Red Wings, like teams that are trying to turn a corner and make the playoffs for the first time in a long time. Like there's gonna be some desperate teams out there. So I think this is probably a solid approach, at least for now. I might want them to be a little more. a little more assertive with someone like Justin Faulk. But with Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, I think this is absolutely the right way to go about it. Um,
Yeah.
so as far as I think we should maybe start by laying out potential suitors, potential buyers. We'll start with Robert Thomas. Um, just I think we should start by discussing the teams that would be interested in trading for him potentially, and or the return that he could fetch for the Blues, and then sort of maybe with that conversation in mind, discuss whether or not that type of return is worth trading Robert Thomas. Does that sound good to you?
Sure.
Um, Great. So I think in terms of buyers, I mean, I think there are. I think the list is long. Like I think for Robert Thomas, a true. I mean, I, I think he's a 1C. You know, there are probably some teams out there where he's more of a 2C. Um, but all you have to do is look at the impact he is capable of having on the team around him, and I think there's a real case to be made that he is definitely a 1C. Um, so the list of teams interested in a player like that is definitely going to be long. I mean, I am wondering about like I think I heard something about the Minnesota Wild saying that like Robert Thomas would be best case scenario. Like if we could get Robert Thomas, like that would be ideal. I don't know if I see the Blues doing that in division, to have him come back, you know, in to Enterprise Center for the Minnesota Wild and just like whoop up on your team. I don't see that happening. Any other like what other teams stand out to you? Like I wonder about. I know for a fact that the Montreal Canadiens fans want him. I mean, that's like every Robert Thomas trade rumor you see out there. It's like the replies are flooded with Habs fans. So, I mean, they definitely could use a center. I'd be wondering, like, I would wonder if having Robert Thomas and Nick Suzuki would be a little redundant. I feel like those are kind of similar caliber players and similar styles in some ways. And then another one I wonder about is, and it's not just because I'm a bit of a fan, but I wonder about the Carolina Hurricanes. Um, they have definitely have some issues and have like yet another good chance at making a run in the playoffs, and they could potentially have figured out some of their goalie issues, and all they need now is more offense. So a team like that sort of is looking for that last piece could be willing to pay up a lot. So thoughts on those teams or any others that you see as potential suitors for like a pretty great 1C.
Yeah, I would be pretty surprised if a team like Minnesota were to swoop in and make the deal. Um, One, having already given up what they did for
Yeah,
the Quinn Hughes, of course, but
yeah,
then also I would be pretty surprised if he got traded in division like that. Yeah, I think definitely the Canadians are a team that could make a deal for Robert Thomas. Maybe is redundant, but you get good players and you figure it out later. Um,
yeah.
I would say um, I was looking at. Oh yes, I think the potentially. I actually think Detroit could be a team that could
Sure,
make a move for Robert Thomas,
sure.
and I think he's a player who would kind of fit the Detroit style as well. So I don't know. I think there are every other NHL team who would benefit. There are 31 other NHL teams who would benefit from having Robert Thomas on their
Yeah.
roster. So, in terms of suitors, the answer is yes.
The answer of who is interested in Robert Thomas, the answer is yes. Um, yeah, I think the other important thing to mention in this conversation is that he has a lot of say over where he goes. I mean, Blues fans will remember his no trade clause kicked in over the summer last July. It's a full no trade clause, and so he cannot be traded without his approval. And so anywhere that they would try to move him, he would obviously have to approve it. And so I look at a team like Buffalo, who's like, where did they come from? Um, like I don't know. Maybe he would waive to go to Buffalo. I don't know Robert Thomas. He's from the Toronto area, right? And so maybe would be interested in that. Um, but I think he'd be a lot more inclined to waive to go to a team that has a chance to compete for a long time because this is his prime, right? So there's that point. And then in terms of the rest of the contract details, he is in year three of an 8-year deal, which will expire in 2031, and his current cap hit is 8.125 million. So truly, in my opinion, a big bargain for a player of his caliber, especially with the rising cap. Feels like that's just going to be what we're saying for a long time until like contracts start to catch up. Um, Players like Robert Thomas who signed long-term deals in the flat cap era, um, it's just going to look like they're being underpaid for a while. So great contract for him. Do you foresee any? I mean, the Blues wouldn't retain on that, right? Like he's too good of a player for them to have to like take any hits with the contract itself, right? Like I would think this is a cheap enough deal for him that they could move it and not have to be on the hook for it, right?
Yeah, I would think so as well. I would think Thomas with a guy like Thomas, you could definitely get um, a sizable return that favors the seller, because the package, in that you're acquiring is so valuable.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've talked about a few of the potential buyers. I mean, like you got to look at your usual suspects too, right? Like Vegas or Florida. It's like I don't know how they would make it work, but I know that they could. Like just based on what we've seen year and year, year in and year out from them. Um, so I think about like in terms of a return, like I'm thinking about it's hard to predict because this rarely happens, right? A player as good as Robert Thomas with a contract like his, like this young and this early on in that contract, um, it doesn't happen often, if really at all, like ever recently. And so it's difficult to predict a return based on that. Um, but there's a great article by Jeremy Rutherford of The Athletic about a potential trade for Robert Thomas, and he and another writer sort of dived into some comps and stuff, and looking at like top centers or top six centers that were traded in the last few seasons. You're looking at like Jack Eichel, Tomas Hertl, Bo Horvat, like guys like that, as well as more recent moves, excuse me, like JT Miller or Pierre-Luc Dubois. So, there are trades out there of moving a high caliber center, but like every situation is different. In terms of like the player comparable that I think of as the most similar player to Robert Thomas, um, that was traded recently is Bo Horvat, and the Vancouver Canucks trading him to the New York Islanders. The return there was Anthony Beauvillier, Atu Radi, and a protected 2023 first round pick that they flipped a month later to the Red Wings for Philip Hronek. So pretty good return there for the Canucks. Now the interesting thing to note though about that return, again, like I said, the situation is different. So Horvat was a pending UFA. He then extended with the Islanders, obviously, but didn't have this lengthy control that Robert Thomas does. So I think for that reason, it's a little bit different. And then the other one I'll mention, just in terms of the contract being a little bit similar in terms of timing and age of the contract itself, is the Tomas Hertl trade. So when the San Jose Sharks traded Hertl to the Vegas Golden Knights, and what's different about this one is that he was 30 years old at the time, and Robert Thomas is much younger. He is 26, right? Yeah, he turns.
Hmm.
Yeah, he turns 27 later this year. The Hurdle trade, the return was David Edstrom, who's a forward, and a first round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. So a couple different trades there that I mentioned, and of course, like I said, the situation just differs, case by case. But I think if you look at other like top six forward trades, like the JT Miller trade, or even like when the Blues traded O'Reilly, or Elias Lindholm was a recent one, it seems like at least a high draft pick, probably a first rounder, is like a starting point, and maybe it sort of expands out from there to include some prospects or other players. So I've thrown a lot at you here, but based on those sort of comparable trades and somewhat comparable players, and the returns they got back, how do you think that aligns with what the Blues could get back for Robert Thomas?
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar. I think that there's definitely some comparisons to be drawn in some of those deals. Um, And I think so with a guy like Thomas, to me, if you're talking about a return, you're talking about it like you said at the end there, it starts at a first round pick, and then you build it out from there. But it's definitely going to include a probably unprotected first, um, as well as, and then then it's what kind of package do the Blues want to receive? Is it something that they want to build more of a prospect? Prospects and picks. Is it that they want to get more? Just picks. Is it more that they want players back in return? And probably to make the cap work, I'd imagine there would be a player coming back in return, anyways.
Right.
Um, so with a for a package for Thomas, you're probably talking about a first round pick, a lesser caliber player, but still like an okay role player, somewhat akin to like someone you'd be happy having on your third line, like I'm trying to think of a Blues example. I don't know, but someone like a stable, solid, kind of like what like Radic Faxa was last year. It's just
Hmm.
like very, very reliable.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that in addition to a first round pick, and then some uh additional benefits beyond that. Probably not a ton more, but maybe a dart throw and a poker chip here,
Hmm.
um, versus a full on what you guarantee this to be good prospect. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, but I find that the return for a Thomas package should be pretty hefty.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be. He is far and away their best player, um, and when he's on, he is the engine that makes the team run, like more or less. So, I mean, to give that up, it would have to be huge, like you said. So, I think some other like contributing factors that could really drive up the price for Robert Thomas are the availability of other centers like that. There aren't really, um, like the other centers that I think of as potential trade pieces are like a Nazem Kadri, or a I know the Rangers have sort of announced that they're selling, so maybe like a Vincent Trocheck, like the returns for those guys are going to be high for sure, but like it's not like players acquiring those guys wouldn't be getting as much as good a player as they would, in my opinion, as Robert Thomas. Like I just think he's a better player. Um, so so that was definitely like that would definitely drive the price up. At least I would hope the Blues would play off of that. Um, and then also like you look at the pending UFAs at the center position, and there's not a whole lot there. So like any team that wants to add a top six center um, is like Robert Thomas might like top the list. I would say him and Vincent Trocheck are probably um, the top guys available either as pending UFAs or as potential trade chips. Like that would be your best bet to add a sure thing, right? So I think those could definitely drive up the price. And then yeah, like in terms of a return, it has to be huge. It has to be. Um, okay. Anything else that you want to mention on like the deal itself, right? This hypothetical deal, whether it's the return or the trade partner, before we sort of talk about is it worth it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, okay, well, so then let me ask you, is it worth it? Because um, there is a reason why players like Robert Thomas do not typically get traded, especially this early on, with the current situation he's in, the current contract he has, and the reason is you want to hold on to players like that. You want to hold on to your homegrown talent that is a sure thing and is performing at a rate in the past couple seasons that would, if trends continue and if this season is the exception and not the trend, he's on pace to be one of the like highest scoring Blues ever, right? Like in terms of Blues career, if he stayed with the Blues his whole career, he'd be up there. He would be um, like I don't know. Is it crazy to say that he would be like maybe number three, or number two?
Yeah,
Like
I think so.
he could be up there, and so that's a lot to give up. That is a huge thing to give up. Um, I think there was I think a project from the Athletic in like maybe last season, um, where they looked at like the top I don't know like top 100 players in the league, or maybe it was like top 200 or something like that, and they looked at like which of these players were traded for and which were like homegrown by their team, and it's like far and away uh, like homegrown players. Like the best players stay with the team that they're on for the most part, and it's because teams don't want to give up those players. So that's all that is to say. The Blues would be giving up a lot here. They'd be giving up a really young player who's only 26 and who they have a lot of control over. I think you can probably start to see where I'm leaning on this. I don't think it's it's worth giving up. I know the return would be big, and I know that the Blues are in a situation where they're starting to exhaust their prospect pool, and they're going to need to replenish that, and they're kind of going to need to retool or do a mini rebuild or whatever you want to say. I know all of that, but I still think that Robert Thomas could fit in the window. And on the back end of this thing, you could be really, really glad that you kept him around. Um, so I don't think it's worth it. I know this has been a difficult year, and I know that he is like one of the players that has drawn a lot of criticism, not only for his lack of performance, but also like his I don't know, I guess his attitude or his body language or whatever. Um, I like I think he's a player you keep. Like that's sort of as similar or as simple as I can say it. So that's my thoughts. I mean, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a um I don't know, a time honored discussion to have
Yeah.
about which direction the Blues should go and how they should go about doing that, because trading Thomas would be an absolutely nuclear move. That would be there is no coming back. We are committing to sucking for the next 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
probably. That trading Thomas means punting on maybe even this generation of prospects, depending on depending on the luck of and the draft skill of how how well they can supplement the talent around that. Um,
Yeah.
because Thomas is still pretty young, and that's why I say like that's dangerous even to potentially this generation, because they're learning from guys like Thomas to as to how to show up to work every day and be a professional hockey player, and also how to better their own skills on the ice. They're looking to a guy like Thomas. And so, and not only that, but on a much more rudimentary level, like if you trade away your 1C,
You don't have a 1C.
even yeah, even looking at some of the lineups that have been coming out of like with Thomas just being out of the lineup, like it's ugly, ugly. Sorry, but
Yeah, no,
I
it is.
like that's a really really big move to make that I think is kind of an overreaction to a bad season. That
Yeah.
the Blues have not had the year that they wanted. That's to be sure, but that doesn't mean that you have to can't cross out the future just yet.
Yeah, I mean, like, look in the system. Can you tell me that there is a center prospect that they have that, like, could be anywhere close to what he is? Like, no. I think the answer is no.
It's Dvorsky.
I mean, like, Dvorsky's your best bet, but there, like, it still remains to be seen if he can even be like a top line center, or if he can
Yeah,
even be a second line center. Like, it's
yeah.
still the jury's out on that. You don't know for sure, and you trade him away. You, I mean, if Dvorsky is your contingency plan, you're putting a lot of your faith in luck and in sort of a really young player and a lot of pressure on a guy like that as well. So, like, maybe not great for his development. Um, but then, like, to replace him, like you said, it could take years. It could take so long to replace uh, your 1C. Like, they are immediately looking for their 1C of the future. And if they're trading Robert Thomas, they might trade Braden Shen as well. It's like, what do you do at that point? Like, who do you even play at that point? And so, like, I just don't think that um, the players in the system are good enough to sort of fill in after you do that. And then you could say, okay, well, then they go on the draft and they try to find that future 1C in the draft. It's like, again, that's a lot of luck, and to, like, have a player to hit like that, it could take so long. It could take forever. So that, yeah, it sounds like we agree it's not worth it.
Yeah, I think so.
Anything else to add on Robert Thomas, or do you want to sort of talk about the other big guy, which is Jordan Kyrou?
Um, yeah, just that I don't know. I just want to think with more than just a. It's so tough to say. I'm just trying to think with like a view beyond just the season is bad,
Yeah.
so we have it's our duty to make it as bad as possible. I don't think that's a prudent way to go about.
I
Um,
promise you, like, yeah, no, I agree. It's like they are doing just fine on their own. Like they don't need to tear it down. Like there's just they just don't have it this year. You know, I think they have the like I don't know. I'm sure there are people that disagree. I think there's enough talent on the roster to be a good team. I think there's just something about the way that they are deploying that talent, something about the system that they're putting out there that um, it's just not their year. And I think I don't know. We've spent long enough dissecting why, um, but yeah, like I'm not convinced that they have to. Yeah, like you said, I'm not convinced that they have to tear it down to the absolute studs and trade away your best player. Um, Another good player, and probably one that, in my opinion, like whether or not I think they should, I think this is one that they could survive a little bit better. Is trading away Jordan Kyrou. Um, we have talked a lot about this over the past couple years, and all the way we've sort of both opposed a Jordan Kyrou trade. Um, but let's go ahead and revisit this one. So Jordan Kyrou, in terms of contract, it's pretty much the exact same as it is with Robert Thomas. He's in year 3 of 8 on his contract. He'll be a UFA in 2031. His cap hit is 8.125 million. He is a year older. He's 27. Um, and he also has a full no trade clause, so he would have to approve a move wherever he goes. So I've got just like a few teams for Jordan Kyrou. And again, like in terms of performance, everyone in St. Louis is pretty much having a down year, at least like points wise. Like I don't think, except for Justin Faulk, he's sort of the lone exception, which makes you feel great, right? Um, so like I think that's not to say that that's not to say that Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou are without blame. Like I think they are definitely, you know, they have a part to play in this thing, and some of their performance or lack thereof is probably part of the reason why they're in the mess that they're in. That being said, Jordan Kyrou I think is an excellent player and one that there would be a lot of interest in. Just the scoring ability. It's not the 40, 50 goal scorer type of guy that a lot of fans were hoping for, but it is reliable scoring of at least like 20, 25 goals. He's probably more of a perennial 30 plus goal guy, like on a normal year throughout the remainder of his prime. He probably breaks 40 at some point, I still think. Anyways, all that is to say, there's a lot of value in Jordan Kyrou, and that means that there would be a lot of interest in Kyrou as there would be with Thomas. So um, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Like with Jordan Kyrou, the teams that I think of as interested in him are not your. I don't really think like most of your teams that are looking to put finishing touches on their roster. Like I think it's a little bit different with him. Like maybe you could say that again, like the Canes would be interested in that. I don't know if a winger is what they need, but like they need scoring. So like that's one where it's like maybe I could squint and see it. But I'm thinking about teams like younger teams that have a chance to sort of do something interesting, do something special, and in a year where expectations were very low for them. The three I'm looking at are San Jose, Seattle, and Anaheim. Like three teams that are in the playoff picture and hanging around. San Jose and Anaheim, of course, have playoff spots. Seattle's not far behind. Like I'm looking at like let's start with I guess we'll just start with Seattle because they are known to have said we want top six scoring. Like that is something they have said. So like I think the interest could easily be there. Um, Now for like San Jose and Anaheim, I sort of put them in the same bucket. I think they're just like really young teams. that, and not to say that Jordan Kyrou is like some old grizzled vet or anything, but like, he's been around, and he's like for sure an NHLer, and there are players on each of those teams where maybe the same can't be said that they're for sure NHLers. Macklin Celebrini, I think, has a 30-point lead on the second highest point scorer on the Sharks. Now, I don't think that Jordan Kyrou would be like keeping up with him, but like they need some more production. Like Macklin Celebrini is carrying that team. And this wouldn't be a deal where they're sort of going all in on this year, right? Like they'd be getting him for his prime, where like right as they're starting to turn a corner. And I think there's sort of like a really similar case to be made for Anaheim, where they're looking for scoring like that. They're looking for like a sure thing who they get his like they don't have to wait for him to develop, but they sort of get him for a little while. So those are like some of the types of teams that I'm thinking about with a Kyrou. Um, I don't know. Thoughts on those three, or any others that you sort of think could be interested?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting angle to take with Kyrou. That it's sort of a younger team on the up and coming, because I think that would be a very attractive partner for the Blues to trade with. Would be
Mm-hmm.
a team such as that, because then you could target some of that young up and coming talent, which the Blues are looking for. Something akin to like making a trade from a um, position of strength for the opposing team,
Right.
and then for the Blues, you're giving up from talent, but to get potential back. Um, so I think that's not what I would expect a Jordan Kyrou trade to look like. I would expect it to be more of a Florida Panthers, or like a contending team looking to add a top scoring winger to push themselves over the edge. And with Kyrie's contract too, you could really push up the buying price, because it's such an amazing, phenomenal contract that has so much like flexibility and room for uh, Kyrou to fit on a roster at his value. I think it's such a fantastic contract in that regard. Um, so I think with Kyrou that there's the return, like Thomas, would be really high, and it's a little bit easier to stomach of a loss. It is a theoretically a player that you could maybe like Moneyball recreate in the aggregate a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, Versus a Robert Thomas who is the engine of your offensive machine. So that would be a case to be made for it, and the return you get would definitely set the team, or would definitely help the team in the future. But
Right.
um, yeah, I would be surprised if it was with a younger up and coming team, but I would not be upset with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are definitely a couple angles that the Blues could look to exploit. Whether it's again like one of those desperate teams looking to find that finishing touch, or one of these young up and comers. But um, I'm not sure. Like it's a similar situation as we talked about with Robert Thomas, where there aren't a lot of comparables in terms of trades that have been made in recent years to compare to. I have a couple that maybe come close, but I'm curious. Do you have any thoughts on like what you'd want out of a return before I read them, or should I go ahead and orient us with a couple of these comparables?
I think go ahead.
Yeah. So okay, the first one I'll mention is the Jake Gensel trade, and now I know that Jake Gensel and Jordan Kyrou are not the same. Are not the same player. Um, Jake Gensel, I think they are. I don't know. I kind of think they're kind of similar, but in terms of point production, Gensel has broken 40 a couple times. Of course, like I think he's got more of the scoring touch, but like I don't think it's that far off. So I think it is interesting to look at. He was traded back in 2024 to the Hurricanes by the Penguins for forward Michael Bunting. Looks like a few forward prospects and then a conditional first round pick in the 2024 NHL draft and a conditional fifth round pick in the same draft. They also threw in the Penguins threw in a defenseman um, headed to the Canes. So that's one where you're looking at like an NHL forward, some forward prospects, a first round pick, and a fifth round pick. And the other one I'll mention, who I think has kind of a similar comp, he's a right winger, is Timo Meier, traded by the San Jose Sharks back in 20, I think it was 2023. Yeah, he was traded, of course, to the New Jersey Devils at 26 years old. So the age is pretty similar. The production to that point was somewhat similar. Again, he had broken 40 goals. Well, he broke 40 goals that year, so that was like the big year goal scoring wise. But like it's a similar situation to Jordan Kyrou, I think, where you see the assists and goals kind of keep pace with each other. They're kind of in the same ballpark when you look at the season as a whole for Timo Meier. Um, and the trade itself, this was a bit of a bigger one. That like there was a lot more to this trade than just Timo Meier for you know for a specific return. The Devils received Timo Meier. They received defenseman Santeri Hataka and a few other pieces, like a couple of prospects and a fifth round pick. They sent to the Sharks. They sent Fabian Zetterlund, who of course has been like a middle six forward for them. They sent, I think at the time, yeah, I guess he's still a prospect. Shakir, I'm going to butcher his name, Mukama Dolan, I think would be how you would say it. A couple prospects, and then a first, a second, and a seventh round pick was the return for Timo Meier, and plus like this was a big deal. Like this was a lot of pieces moving back and forth, and so maybe the Blues could explore something similar where they try to maximize the return by throwing in, um, you know, I don't know, some other player, maybe a couple prospects or something, or a late pick. Although I don't know if they're in the position to be doing something like that, to be honest. So big return for the Sharks there. Again, they gave up a lot to get it, but you saw them receive an NHL level forward, a few prospects, and then first, second, and seventh round draft picks. So both of these deals, you're seeing a mix of things. You're seeing NHL level player, uh, like a package of a few prospects, and then a few picks, right? Whether it's two or three picks, and the quality of those picks differs deal by deal. But those are, I think, the most comparable that I could find or that I could think of in recent years. I think you could also look at like Tyler Toffoli or Alex DeBrincat, guys like that have been traded in recent years. But I think the level of comparability starts to vary a little too widely. So, thoughts on those returns, and would you be happy with something similar in exchange for Jordan Kyrou? Just sort of setting aside whether or not you think it'd be worth it. Do you think that return is sort of good value for Jordan Kyrou? I guess is what I'll say.
I definitely think that return would be good value for Jordan Kyrou, getting a first and some prospects and some picks.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of not having to choose and getting, to pick all of the above is exactly what you want. Um, and with a guy like Kyrou, the return wouldn't be as much as Thomas, what he could fetch, but it
Sure.
would be pretty close because I really think the operative thing here is that contract is
Yeah.
so affordable, and such good bargain for a player of his caliber, that he is, more than worth it, proven to be more than worth it, even if he isn't, Jake Gensel, who we all kind of wanted him to be. Um,
Yeah.
Instead, he's still a very, very valuable, a very, very valuable uh, asset that would fetch a high price. And I think, yeah, the return, just like Robert Thomas, starts with a first or second round pick. I think with Kyrou, there's a little bit more flexibility there. But I would say a first or second round pick plus. And probably also you'd need a player, coming back to make the cap work out. So um,
Right.
I uh, I I definitely think the return for a Kyrou package would be worth listening on, and I like that Doug is listening on these options because they are just that, options. But you might as well hear it out all the way up until the end.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I think I agree in terms of is this good value for Jordan Kyrou. Um, I think I'm looking at the Gensel one and just looking at like his performance up until that point. He had um, I think let's see in 20 like a few years prior in 2018-19 had 40 goals and 36 assists, had a couple I don't know, I guess he was injured, and I guess that was also the COVID season following that, and then 40 goals, 36 goals, 30 goals, like in the aggregate points wise, it's pretty similar, but I think Gensel as a name carried a little bit more weight. But like up to that point, the production wasn't super far off. And then in terms of the age he was traded at, it was 29 instead of 27. So there is that as well. And so like while the player might not be like a one-to-one comparison, I think the value of the contract for Jordan Kyrou carries a lot of weight, and so that return I think would probably be somewhat comparable to what you could get for Kyrou. So again, an NHL forward, a few prospects, and a couple picks. Like I don't think that would be that crazy, and it's not like you're getting their absolute best, young NHL player, some of their top prospects, and like a first and a second. Like I don't think that's sort of the situation where you'll be in, but I think you could probably get a little bit of everything if you wanted to, or like really go all in, try to get a first round pick and maybe another pick or take a flyer on a prospect or something. Like I think they have a lot of flexibility with whether they want quantity or quality for both Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou. And so I think it's interesting for that reason. And I think the value I think would be good in exchange for Kyrou.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you first this time, since I went first on Robert Thomas. Do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's worth it to trade Jordan Kyrou? We both oppose a Robert Thomas trade, but as we mentioned, a scoring winger is a little bit easier to replace. Maybe a little more difficult, or a little bit more than a little easier. Maybe a lot easier to replace than your 1C. There's already guys on the roster, like Dylan Holloway in particular, who might have a similar-ish profile in terms of the finishing touch and the goal scoring ability. Justin Carbonneau is in the system, and I think is in a lot of ways pretty similar to Jordan Kyrou. So there is a little bit more redundancy in the system and on the team than there is for Robert Thomas. So that being said, do you think it's worth it? What are your thoughts on the Blues trading Jordan Kyrou?
I I actually, this may come as a surprise to you. I'm actually kind of like 50-50 on this one.
Wow,
Um
we've come a long
I
way.
I know what I want is for them to not trade Kyrou
Yeah,
because I really like supporting Kyrou as a player, and
yeah,
I like watching him play for my hockey team, but I do think it actually it makes a good amount of sense. Um,
Yeah.
like I think the timing makes a little bit more sense than a Robert Thomas. I still think he is within a good window for the Blues to still maximize his value. So it's not like the timing is perfect, but I still think it makes some sense. Um, and the other reason the timing works out is because it coincides with such a terrible year for the Blues, as well as you could really find any kind of partner uh, if you're trading Jordan Kyrou. Um, so like I think that um, I do see the reasons for wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that they do make sense. But yeah, I if I am building the team how I want. I don't want them to trade Jordan Kyrou because I like Jordan Kyrou, and I think he's a really good talent. That is not, his combination of his speed and his IQ and all the skills that he's developed over the years in St. Louis has turned him into a really good player. And especially when you talk about defensively, that's really hard to replace what Jordan Kyrou is able to bring to the table defensively. So I think there are reasons for and against doing it. But I don't know. I think that level of shakeup is not what you want in year one, really year zero of a rebuild. Um, you want to, wait and see if you can pull yourself out of it a little bit. I'd like to think before throwing away your, second or third most valuable uh, piece on the team. So I wouldn't do it, but I do actually think that there is a pretty good case to be made for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm in a similar boat. I don't know if I'd say 50-50, maybe like 60-40 or 70-30. I'll say 65-35. Split the difference. Um, more so leaning towards keeping Kyrou. And it's for not to the same level, but to similar reasons as like wanting to hang on to Robert Thomas. I think age wise and sort of like timing wise, you could still make it work. Like um, you could pivot and turn this thing around quick enough to still capitalize on Jordan Kyrou's prime for you, rather than sending him where someone else will capitalize on that prime. Um, and I think while it is easier to replace than a top line center who drives offense the way that Robert Thomas does, I think it's still pretty tough to replace a 30 goal scorer. Um, and so there's a lot of value in that, even for a team that is struggling and might not be sure where they're headed next season, but they've got him for 5 more years after this, and so I think there could be a lot of value in that. But like you said, and I agree with you, I am seeing and understanding the rationale for it now better. Like, I guess I've warmed up to it rather than, or I guess compared to where I was at like a year ago, where we had a very, very different impression of this Blues team. And so if it's just a package they can't refuse, I will understand it, and as long as they really do get good value for him. Um, but like, and it doesn't sound like this is the route they're taking. I don't think they should be shopping him. I don't think they should be uh, aggressively pursuing a trade for him, which we've both said. So
Mhm.
yeah, similar to you, I would rather keep him. That would be my preference. I think I think it might be tough to replace his scoring ability. Um, and while I think you could do it, I feel like like I feel like the by the time you do it, like it might take more than long enough to make it like necessarily worth it. So I don't know. Um, I don't know if I do it, but like you, I see the argument there and I understand it, and I don't think it would be the end of the world. It would be the end of the world if they traded Robert Thomas, though. That would be it. That would be it.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
All right. So I mean, I think Robert Thomas sounds like we both think he's untouchable. Jordan Kyrou, maybe not untouchable, but the return has to be significant. Um, we've talked about which players might be untouchable before, so that's an episode that we have done. I can't remember when we did that, but we sort of talked about who is the Blues core. I think that was a few weeks ago. We talked about what Doug Armstrong has left behind for Alexander Steen. So go check out that one. Who we think of as untouchable, who we think of as the core pieces. But there are definitely some players that we think need to be moved. I think the top of that list is Justin Faulk. And so go check out our last episode if you haven't already, because we sort of talked about some potential packages that could be received by the Blues in exchange for Justin Faulk. We also talked about Braden Schenn in that episode, some more like quote unquote realistic trade chips, players that the Blues, could feasibly move, and it wouldn't be a huge shakeup, I don't think. So go check that one out. We also talked about Olympics recently. What else have we done? We talked about World Juniors and prospects, although that was a little while ago. We talked with Mike Meyer. So go check out our recent episodes. And if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel, as that's the best way to support us. Like this video, leave a comment on your thoughts. I'm sure that there will be some strong opinions about whether or not people want to see Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou traded, on both sides of the aisle for that one. And then if you're listening on audio or on Spotify and Apple, follow, rate, and review. All those things go a long way and help us out a ton. And then we're on social media as well, if that's your thing. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Post a lot of other great stuff and love to interact with everyone over there. So I think that'll do it for us this time. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.